Hello, everyone. Today we are talking about kitchen. So today it won't be kitchen organizing as a whole because that is way too big of a topic. Instead, this will be about food storage and how to prevent food waste and that sort of thing. So, um, so first I want to talk about food storage in the fridge. Um, so it's a good tip to make sure that if you have any meat that you're storing in your fridge, to position it so that it's not going to be dripping onto any raw vegetables in the fridge. So whether that be that you keep the meat in a container, if you have it on a shelf lower than the vegetables, um, or the vegetables themselves are in containers, or somehow there's a barrier, because that can lead to a lot of problems. And I'm sure meat doesn't leak that often, but it's always good to have in the back of your mind of where is a reasonable place to store this meat. Um, and a lot of fridges will come equipped with certain drawers that they have writing on it. So this will be like the cheese drawer, this will be the meat drawer. So that's why they've sort of designated those areas, just to make sure that it's complying to food and health safety standards. In a restaurant, for instance, you would never have, or hopefully you would not have, if you looked in their back fridge, you wouldn't have any meat stored on top of vegetables. Like there's always that sort of separation. So in different from that, I also just want to talk about organizing stuff within your fridge to make it easy to find things, easy to eat up stuff that you've already that are maybe leftovers, and also making it easy for yourself to create grocery lists when you're going to the store. So definitely keep like things together so that you know where to look for something. So if you keep all of your produce in one area, all your cheese in one area, all your sauces in one area, then you know exactly where to go to find that item when you're making a recipe, or when you're deciding what you need to get for groceries. Um, Keep your leftovers on a very prime shelf, so something maybe at the top, right at eye level, somewhere very eye catching, so that you remember that you have to use up those leftovers. And because often I think that is the biggest culprit of food waste, is either produce that's going bad or leftovers that have just been sitting for days, weeks, who knows how long, and that haven't been able to get a second life, essentially. And also, keeping vegetables together that complement each other is really important. So there's certain vegetables and fruits that require different moisture levels. Strawberries, for instance, are very moist. I apologize for people who hate that word. So they require a more dry environment so that they don't mold like immediately. If they're kept in a really moist environment, they're going to mold quickly. Carrots, on the other hand, require more wet environments because they're very dry. So making sure that you're pairing things, you can find lists online if you're not certain what type each fruit or vegetable is. But keeping similar things together is a really great way to help prevent food waste, because those fruits and vegetables aren't going to affect each other negatively. I also wanted to mention these cool bins. So I got these a couple years ago from a place I used to work, but they're by OXO. I don't know if you can see the brand. Not really. All right. OXO is the brand. And they basically, this bin has a liner in it that has holes. So the produce isn't going to be sitting in the moisture that always collects at the bottom. And it allows the produce to sort of stay fresher. And it also has vents at the top that you can adjust. So the celery I have with open vents, just because it can live in drier environments. And you can also close the vents if you want it to be more sort of moisture capturing. This is not necessarily a recommendation to get something like this, but there are certain organizing tools that can help you keep your produce fresher. And honestly, if you just had some sort of bin with a basket in it, I think that would be a great alternative too, just to keep the items out of that moisture in the bottom that always collects. I also wanted to talk about cupboards. So when you're grocery shopping and you come home with your new items, make sure that you're always putting the new items at the back. This may be common sense, but often it doesn't happen that way. So just making sure that everyone in your household is on board with doing this, it helps prevent so much food waste. So if you're, if you have new cans of tomato sauce, put them at the back of the old cans. So you're using the old cans first. That way you're sort of keeping on top of any best before dates that are approaching. I also recommend doing a regular audit of your cupboards to see if there's anything that needs to be eaten up. Maybe do some meal planning around those items. Base your grocery shop around complementary items, just to make sure you're using those up. If you have a bunch of little small packages, either of spices, like ramen noodles, baking supplies, keeping those in a bin, like a small little basket. It could just be a cardboard box, whatever you have around. Keeping something like that in your cupboard collectively is a really great way to make sure that things don't get lost in the back of your cupboard. So if you're needing ramen noodles, or if you're needing your spices or your baking supplies, you can take out that whole bin at once, see what you have in there, and kind of have a sense of what your inventory is. And it makes sure items don't get stuck in the back. I also wanted to talk about reducing your plastic waste with food packaging, because single-use plastic is obviously something that is plaguing the earth and all of us, especially with COVID, when a lot of businesses weren't, they had sort of changed their policies just because they wanted to remain safe with the pandemic, which totally makes sense. But see if you can get any items at your local bulk food store with your own container. Locally here in KW, there's Full Circle Foods in Kitchener, and there's also Zero Waste Bulk in Uptown Waterloo. And Bulk Barn just recently started their program back up again. They had started it in 2017 or 18, I believe, but then they halted it with COVID. But basically you can bring an empty container. It can be a plastic container, it can be a glass jar, whatever you have, and they just weigh it for you. It has to be clean. And then you fill it with whatever items you want, and then they just subtract the weight of the actual container, and you just pay for the contents of your container. But it's a really awesome way to be able to reduce that packaging and be able to get the ingredients that you want. Oftentimes this can be more expensive than buying things prepackaged, so it's completely understandable that people don't often have the means to do shopping like this. But you can also find alternatives to what you usually get in maybe paper or cardboard packaging, or in glass or metal cans, rather than those plastic containers, because plastic requires so much energy to be created, and then it doesn't wear down. It's not generally recyclable. Some of them are, but not all of them. And they're not able to be repurposed in a lot of ways like glass and metal are. So just kind of taking note of what you usually buy in certain packages and seeing what alternatives are out there is a great way that you could reduce your plastic usage. If you do get things in plastic because that's the best option for you, whether it's the best price or just that's the product that you need, by all means, get those items. Your health and your budget is way more important than any plastic packaging. But see if maybe you can repurpose those packages for other purposes, or recycle some of the components. For example, you can use plastic jugs or plastic trays for drawer organizers or other storage containers. You can also reuse plastic freezer bags. Like maybe if you get frozen fruit in a package, you can reuse that package for future frozen fruit. So definitely kind of get creative and see what ways that you can reduce your plastic waste, or be able to repurpose items for other uses. I hope this was helpful. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you tomorrow.